Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for joining us today for this live webinar from ICNA Council for Social Justice. This is our monthly seminars that we are doing on the topic of anti-bullying and our Stop Bullying campaign. Please visit our website at www.icnacsj.org/stopbullying. Today we have a very important guest on our program. Our brother named Ishaq Pathan, who's very instrumental in the anti-bullying campaign. He does a lot of workshops around the country on the topic, and we request all of you to visit their website, www.ing.org, because he works for the ING Youth. He's the ING Youth Manager over there, which is a nonprofit organization. It affiliates and partners around the country. He has a Bachelor of Arts from Hamilton College with a major in anthropology and minors in education and Middle East and Islamic world studies. Ishaq has conducted dozens of youth training seminars and spoken to thousands of students on topics related to Islam and Muslims. He's also a member of the Interfaith Youth Corps Alumni Network. And we're very pleased to have him here today and do this very important seminar. He's going to be talking about things about what parents and kids can do and what they need to know about bullying. And also how parents and kids can actually fight against bullying, which is very important because a lot of parents and kids just don't know what to do if their child is bullied or if they view somebody being bullied. So inshallah, he'll talk about these things. At the end of the webinar, we will allow you to have questions as well, and Ishaq will talk more about that. But inshallah, please, this recording will be is recorded. This whole webinar will be recorded and it'll be available on our website and on the YouTube channel. So please be sure to share it with your family and friends. At the end of the webinar, I do have a few questions of my own that I will ask him, and inshallah, we'll have a lively discussion afterwards as well. And from here, so I'm going to give it to Ishaq to take it from there.
Great. Thank you, Brother Ramiz. Thank you to the ICNA Council of Social Justice for inviting me on this webinar. I'm really proud of them and happy that they're doing this year-wide campaign because, again, as I'll talk about, this situation and this issue is really important, and it's something that we all need to do our part in. So as he mentioned, my name is Ishaq Pathan. I'm the ING Youth Manager at the Islamic Networks Group. The Islamic Networks Group is an organization that focuses on education and dialogue about different religious traditions with a specific focus on American Muslims. So we believe in education and dialogue in order to promote peace and understanding, and then in my case, reduce religious-based bullying. So I'm going to go ahead and start our presentation here. And so you probably won't see me anymore, but I'm here. Don't worry, you can hear my voice. So today's topic is removing the stigma around bullying. Again, I'm Ishaq Pathan. And one thing that I want to say is that if you have any questions throughout this time, please feel free to email ishaq@ing.org. It's right there with any of your questions, and hopefully we can get to them at the end of the webinar. Without further ado, I will go ahead and get started. So over the course of the webinar, this next hour, we're going to first focus on problems. What is the problem of bullying? How do we define it? What is unique about bullying of Muslim students? And then we'll spend the bulk of our time on solutions. So I can sit here and talk about the problem, but we need to know what can we do about it. And so I have some advice for students, advice for parents, as well as advice for schools on a whole. So again, if you have any questions, email me at ishaq@ing.org, and we can get to those questions at the end. So before we begin, we really need to look at what is bullying. When we talk about bullying, people have a bunch of different ideas of what it is, and there's a big sense of stigma around it as well. When you mention anti-bullying workshop to a student, or you mention bullying assembly, they're not going to be that thrilled about it. They're going to be like, oh, this again. And that's often because these things aren't defined, they aren't identified, and they aren't talked about in a meaningful and positive way. So to begin, stopbullying.gov defines bullying as an unwanted aggressive behavior that implies a real or perceived power imbalance. The behavior is repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. And so I want to unpack this by looking at a few really important components of this definition. The first is unwanted aggressive behavior. So what's really important to know is that students don't want to be bullied. You know, if some student complains about them being bullied or them experiencing or teasing or harassment, you know, sometimes people might say, oh, it's okay, or, you know, you might have done something to deserve that or something like that. But in reality, they didn't do anything to deserve that. Why would they? They don't want to be bullied. The second is a real or perceived power imbalance. So there's a bunch of different examples of this, some of which are, you know, anything when one person has power over another. So this most commonly can be defined as physical power. So if a student is either physically smaller than another student, that student can definitely exert their power over that one. If the student is more popular, maybe has more friends, so they might have a group of people that is picking on one particular student, so power in numbers. If it's a teacher, so a teacher has an incredible amount of power over the student, over the classroom, and teachers could definitely be bullying students, which I'll talk about later. And then finally, the last component is repeated or can be repeated over time. So I want to clarify something. There is teasing, you know, which can be wanted or unwanted. It really depends. There is harassment, which is an unwanted aggressive behavior, most often with a power imbalance, but it's just one time. So someone says something to you and they go about their day, they never say anything of that space again, and it happened one time. But bullying is something that happens over and over again. So this is really important because it's bullying that has the most effects on a child and on a student's mentality, especially growing up. If a student goes to school and is bullied, and then the next day deals with that same comments and those same incidents, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, they're slowly going to start to lose hope, faith, and everything in the world, in people. And that's really the issue. So, you know, having incidents that occur more and more and having students lose hope, lose an understanding of what it's like to not be bullied, that's where the real trauma comes into play, which has lifelong effects. And then, you know, put simply, we like to say it's how it makes you feel that makes the difference. So again, if something doesn't, you know, it's not classified as bullying, or it doesn't feel well, you know, you don't want that thing to happen. There's something that enabled that to happen, such as that power imbalance, and lastly, it keeps happening over and over again, then again, it's a really big problem. It's also important to identify the different types of bullying. So we like to define 4 types. The first is physical, and physical is pretty self-explanatory. So it's any student physically hurting another student. It can include sexual harassment, it can include kicking, tripping, stealing, all sorts of things like that. Anything where there's physical actions involved. The next is verbal. Verbal is the most common, and it usually involves words or gestures to harm or shame another student. So it could include teasing, but ridiculing, inappropriate comments, inappropriate sexual comments, threatening harm, all sorts of that is all verbal. Indirect or relational, students have a difficult time identifying indirect or relational incidents as bullying because they're not explicit. So it's not someone saying something to you, but it's someone saying something about you to other people. So it could be ignoring you as well, and anything like that. So something, again, it's not direct, but you can feel it. You can feel that people are making comments about you. You can feel that someone's deliberately excluding you from an activity. And then lastly, cyberbullying. So this is any of these things that happen online. So that could be rude, mean text messages. It could be rumors, lies, photos on social networks, or just, you know, fake profiles, fake videos that embarrass people. One thing I want to clarify is that physical, verbal, or indirect they could all manifest themselves as teasing, harassment, or bullying. Cyberbullying is never just harassment or teasing. It's always going to be bullying. The reason being that post, that photo, that email, that's always there. I can log on to my internet one day and see the post, and then I can go back the next day and it's still going to be there. Let's say that it's deleted, someone could still in between that time take a photo of that, and then therefore now that photo is repeated. If someone is, you know, physically saying something to you, or is verbally saying something to you in person, but someone records that, then you're going to see that video over and over again, and it's going to be like that person said that phrase to you every day. And again, so that's incredibly an issue. One thing I also want to point out, that cyberbullying, again, is getting more attention, and that's well-deserved, because oftentimes if a student is bullied, they're not going to be as social, and they might turn to the internet for solace. And for that bullying that happens in their school to continue and visit them at home while they're, you know, trying to get a break from it, that's just incredibly degrading for that student. What's really important and really unfortunate is that bullying is a national problem. So between 1/4 and 1/3 of students in the United States say they've been bullied at school. Unfortunately, 1/2 of students have witnessed some type of bullying at school. So in general, this, you know, when you grasp this idea that students are going to school and they have all of these pressures, and on top of that, you know, 1/4 to 1/3 have to deal with other students making fun of them, insulting them, hurting them physically, shaming them, all of that, that's creating a really bad environment, and it's creating a really bad mentality for students moving forward. And so we really need to all do our parts to work on addressing this really big issue. As you know, I specifically work with Muslim students, as I mentioned. So bullying of Muslim students is actually even higher than the national. So it's usually double. So one study found that 53% of California respondents reported that students are being made fun of or insulted or abused for being Muslim. This was a study by CARE California. You can read it online. And most of this was verbal. So, you know, calling a student a terrorist, calling a student killer, making offensive comments to them after a big event in the news. It could also include, you know, physically tugging or pulling on a student's scarf. That's 1/3, 33% of students. And then also in general, besides that, just physical harm or harassment, that's excluding that of these this offensive touching or pulling. Additionally, the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding reported that 42% of Muslims with parents reported bullying of their children because of their faith. Now, I want to point this out because this isn't 42% of Muslim children reporting this. This is 42% of Muslim parents reporting this. And we all know, and we'll talk about this, that a lot of students are not reporting things to their parents. And so the fact that 4 out of 10 are actually talking to their parents, then reporting that to this survey is a very low conservative estimate, and the reality of which is much higher. What's unfortunate, and in the last webinar of last month, which I also highly encourage you to watch, Imam Khalid Griggs touched on this as well, but I'll just elaborate it in a sec, that the bullying doesn't end among students. There's also actions of teachers and the bias of teachers that contribute. So this could be direct behavior by teachers. I've had a student in my workshop complain that a teacher once said, the Muslims only won the Crusades because they bred like rabbits, which again is just a very offensive idea, and it clearly shows a bias on behalf of the teacher in terms of you know, what they're thinking about this event in history. The second is an incident of a Texas teacher, and you can look this up, which involves students watching a movie, and one student was laughing along, and then the student asked them, why are you laughing? You shouldn't be laughing because we all think you're a terrorist. So having a teacher say that to a student, again, having that power imbalance times 10 is incredibly degrading for the student. Unfortunately, in this incident, the classmates actually joined in, and they were then making more comments about that student. So when young people see adults not setting a good example of how to behave, then they're gonna imitate that, and again, providing a really toxic school environment. There's also indirect behavior by teachers. So you might have heard about this student, this teacher in Tennessee, who in her class, there were students looking at this girl wearing a hijab or a scarf, and they were talking about how much better she would look without it, and how her hair was very pretty, and she should show it. And they actually started to remove this girl's scarf. And the teacher, while not directly removing this, posted a Snapchat video of students removing this classmate's scarf. Incredibly out of line, but unfortunately something that exists in a lot of schools around the country. Lastly, whether or not the teacher means it or doesn't, implicitly there's often a sense of marginalization or targeting that goes on during classroom discussions about Islam and Muslims, whether that's around certain events that happen in the news or of the like. Students generally feel much less comfortable when the teacher is covering something relating to Muslims in their classroom, most likely because they're not equipped with the right training to be able to do so. So this is a general overview of the state of bullying, and specifically Muslim bullying in this country right now. And as you can see, it is not good. You know, and this again is where people on different levels, whether you're a student or a parent or just a school educator or administrator, really needs to put in the work to get this done. One thing that is really important as I move forward is that these actions need to be active rather than passive, and they also need to go from reactive to proactive. So if we just say that we hope bullying is going to stop, but we don't take an active role against this, we don't take an active role looking for situations that could be classified as bullying and doing something about them, then situations are going to keep coming up and they're not going to get resolved. Additionally, it's much easier to proactively create an environment, a climate where students care about one another and appreciate one another for who they are and what their differences are, and much more rewarding to do that than to have a school assembly after one student gets bullied, telling all the students not to bully people. That's, generally, again, reactive solutions, while important and while they're necessary, we need to get to a point where we're beyond that, where we're proactive and students care for one another, that they wouldn't bully each other in the first place. So I'm going to start with students because, again, students are they're the most important in this whole equation, and they're the ones who are directly affected by this incident, by this climate. The first thing to really recognize is that as a student, you're not alone. It's a tough time being in school. I always talk about this, but you have to wake up way too early, and you're tired, and you have to then go home and do a bunch of homework, and there's so many pressures. It's really just a difficult thing to do, and it's easy to get lost in that and to think that people don't understand you, they don't care about you, to get stressed about that, when in reality, like, it's important to be reminded that the people around you, like those adults in your life, your classmates and everyone, they do care about you. They want you to succeed, and again, more often than not, they're just unaware of what to do, or they're unaware that there's an issue. So that communication is really important, which I'll talk about in a second. In addition, you shouldn't have to go deal with bullying. You're already stressed. You know, homework's not going to stop. Changing a morning school time probably is not going to stop. You know, taking difficult classes to like challenge yourself, not going to change. What can change is the extra amount of bullying that you might receive during that time. You know, you don't have to deal with that. It's not normal. You may think that everyone is going through it, but like there's a small minority of students that are not. And you know, we need to get to a point where you're in that category. And then again, if it feels wrong, it is wrong. Like, you are entitled to your own level of sensitivity. So you can't complain about a situation and someone can't tell you, oh, you're just you're being too sensitive, or you're overreacting. You know, if someone hurt you, then they have to then that needs to be right. That needs to be made right. And you have an ability to ask for that. Now, if you are teased, harassed, or bullied, there's a few things to keep in mind. The first is to not retaliate. So it's really easy to fight back physically, mentally, emotionally. But when a student fights back, especially physically, a situation will go from being a situation of bullying to a fight. And usually, based on school policies, when a situation is a fight, both people get in trouble because everyone is unsafe. You yourself are putting yourself in danger, and you're also putting everyone else around you in danger. And so again, it's really important not to bottle up that teasing, harassment, or bullying and then do something drastic. Rather, it's important to deal with it at the source. So, you know, one of the first things to do is to tell an adult whom you trust. And we'll talk about, you know, that a little bit later as well. But in general, someone you trust can be anyone in your life. They can be a parent if you trust your parent. They can be a teacher, a school administrator, a coach, a spiritual leader, someone who is an adult. Even if it's not an adult, a friend that you trust, and then you can go with that friend to an adult that you trust. As I mentioned earlier, you're not alone. The people around you, they want to help you, but they don't know what's going on. They can't help you if you don't tell them what it is that is going on. One thing that's important, again, like, is to be able to ask for help. It's not a big deal, or it's not, you don't have to do everything yourself. People around you, again, are there, and it's important to utilize them and use them to help you with that situation. In addition to that, it's important to understand that it's not your fault. So you didn't do anything to deserve the bullying, and people might tell you that, and don't listen to them. And your inner voice might tell you that, but again, don't listen to that. Take extra steps to feel good about yourself. So, you know, do things that are fun. Do things that you know are fun. Even if you have a ton of homework, take a break. Go eat ice cream. If you like ice cream, go to the ice rink. I don't know what you do for fun, but do it. And again, like, you deserve happiness. You deserve to feel good in these situations. And then get the professional support you need to feel better. Again, so there is a stigma around mental health. There's a stigma around mental health professionals, but they can be a really good resource. So whether that means like a school counselor, or it means a professional outside of school, if you feel like you need help with you know, your mental state, whether that is a sense of anxiety or a sense of depression or anything like that, telling someone about it and then going to that professional will go a long way. And then lastly, which I'll again kind of elaborate more on, which is act like Muhammad Ali or Ibtihaj Muhammad and appear as confident as you can. So people are generally less likely to pick on you or to do anything to you if you're very confident about your identity or about just yourself. It's unclear why, but, you know, showing confidence in whatever you're doing, usually it creates respect from people. And again, I'll touch on that in a second. if you see others getting bullied, you know, 1 out of 2 students in the country witness bullying, and I'm sure most people here have. And again, it's important to take that active process, to keep an eye out and look out for your fellow students who might be in bad situations, and help them through it. So the first thing to do is to not join in, and this is pretty self-explanatory, but it should be said. You know, one who is bullied is just as likely to bully, and that should not be understated. So, you know, not necessarily like laughing along because you want to fit in. It creates a bad environment. If someone is teasing someone else and then you join in on the teasing, what will stop that person from turning at you and teasing you? Not much, especially because that's what they're trying to do. The next thing is calling out a bully if it's safe. And I really want to stress if it's safe. So there are situations where it is not safe to call out a bully. If a bully has a bat, it's not a good idea to step in front and try to stop that person or grab the bat. You're going to get hurt. If the bully is 10 times your size, not a good idea. But if you feel confident and you feel like able to, then step up and say something. If you don't, which is perfectly okay, because again, it's really only if it's safe, then do damage control is what I'll call it. Go to the student afterwards and be supportive and positive. Ask them how their day is. If you see someone getting, you know, bullied in homeroom, at lunch, just check in with them. See what's going on, see if they're doing okay, seeing if they need anything. When people get bullied, or when people deal with any sort of discrimination or any sort of harm, they will not only focus on the person doing the harm, but they'll focus on everyone else as well. And if you're someone who is able to step into their life and just check in on them really quickly, it takes a few words, they're going to remember that. It's easy for positive experiences to really drown out these negative ones. And then finally, at the end of all of this, reporting that incident to a trusted adult is, again, a really good idea just for records. One thing I want to mention about reporting and why it's important, again, it's important for adults to kind of know what's going on because then they can help. But also, it allows researchers and other people like that to show that this is a major problem and it's a systemic issue. It's really easy to say that these incidents are isolated when in reality they're not. The bullying that is happening to Muslim students is a direct effect of the Islamophobia that's rampant in this country. And it is really important to that if there are incidents of, you know, targeting your faith, to point that out, because you're helping to paint the picture of the accurate picture that there is a connection between these two, and that these incidents are not just isolated incidents, but rather, again, intertwined with one another. Finally, you know, reporting an incident, like even if like you're okay with it, it doesn't stop that person from doing it to someone else, and maybe they won't be okay with it. So maybe like even if it's not for you, do it for the next student that comes along that hopefully won't get bullied because that bully was adequately addressed or adequately dealt with. And then this is, you know, one of the last things I'll talk about in relation to students, which is taking back the power. So there are times when an incident might be one time, like an incident of harassment or teasing, where you don't, you know, you can tell an adult later, but it might be good to deal with it on the spot. And you can really think of these incidents as opportunities. So one way to do that is to first flip the script and respond kindly and thoughtfully. So, you know, we talk about how patience is a really good response. And I think, you know, patience can be interpreted as, like, you know, staying silent and just saying stop and then walking away or ignoring it. Like, that's patience. But I think greater patience, a higher level of patience, is to actually look at your bully straight in the eye and respond kindly and thoughtfully, because they will be very confused. It's when people are mean, they expect mean back, and when you don't give it to them, then they're literally puzzled because they're like, why isn't this person being mean to me? And are more likely to then rethink everything they're doing and be nice. And in that kind and thoughtful response, you know, taking time to educate the other about what it is they might be commenting on. So if it's a situation of them, you know, commenting on a hijab, you know, actually taking time to educate that person about why it is you're wearing the hijab. Why do you look different? What it is, and then, you know, even thoughtfully challenging them, saying like, what is so different about me wearing this hijab? I think in that process, you can really turn incidents of bullying into learning educational incidents, whereby the person's gonna feel bad, first of all, which is, you know, you want them to feel bad so they won't do it again. And then they're also gonna come away learning, and they will respect you. They will respect you more because, again, people respect confidence. I have a picture of Muhammad Ali here. He was confident, and people didn't agree with his opinions, but they often respected him. I'm just going to point some resources out for you to kind of look at to educate others. Is on our website, ing.org youth FAQ. You can go and view a list of 50+ questions that are specifically tailored to you, that are questions about Islam and Muslims. So, you know, for things that students might target or make fun of, you have, by looking at these answers, you have, you know, direct ways of responding to these people that are educational. And then again, there's guides on how to do it kindly and nicely as well, which will again puzzle that bully and stop the bullying. So some questions include, you know, if Islam is peaceful, why are you Muslims always fighting? Or what is Sharia? Or, you know, is Sharia law coming to take over the United States? All of these are questions that you can find answers to, and they're an incredibly valuable resource, if not for yourself, but also for other people as well. Additionally, we do have online youth presentations that cover 4 different topics. They're at ing.org/youthppt. And these are presentations you can give in your classroom or community to educate others about Islam. More often than not, teasing about Muslims comes from ignorance. And if you take the time to thoughtfully educate them confidently, and I mean confidently, by saying, yeah, this is my tradition, and this is what we've done for you, or this is what we've contributed. A history of American Muslims, saying, you know, I have every right to be in this country because my Muslim spiritual ancestors came to this country in the 1700s, and really outlining and rooting yourself as an American, as a Muslim in this country confidently, that will really go far in terms of reducing you as a potential target. Okay, so that's generally it for students. If any students are watching or parents of students are watching and you have any questions, again, email me at ishaq@ing.org. The next thing I'm going to do is parents, and talk to parents about what parents can do. So the first thing is really stressing the importance of parent communication. So it's common for parents, and first of all, if you are a parent and you're watching, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this webinar. Because it is a really, because hopefully you'll benefit from it, and it's a great step in showing, like, you know, that you want to do something for your child. But in general, parents often are focused on academics when it comes to school, and this not only builds up academic pressure on the students, but it really makes them not feel like they can approach you for things. The reality is that a social environment is just as important as these academics. If students are unhappy and they're not enjoying their social environment, then their academics are not going to be as good as we'd like them to be. So really taking time to talk to children and talk to teenagers and keep that open relationship is incredibly important. So, you know, moving just beyond how was your day to questions like, what did you learn today? Anything interesting happening? Like if your child wants to go to a friend's house, like who's your friend? Have them come over to your house, like, and really be part of your child's life. Asking how teachers covered material when they're talking about Muslims. That's really a really important thing to do. And then finally, how can we help and be supportive? Children and teenagers, while they don't say it, they want to talk. And you know, opening up that communication with them so that they feel comfortable to talk, you will learn a lot about them. And that leads me to my second point, which is listening. So it's really common. One of the main reasons why students don't tell their parents or don't tell adults in general about incidents of bullying is because of two things. They feel, number one, no one's going to do anything about it, or people are going to do too much about it. And that's because they don't feel heard. You know, listening to your child, having that relationship before any incident happens so that they feel comfortable telling you, but then also listening to them afterwards. You know, it's common to have this sentiment of, okay, thanks for telling me, now I'm going to deal with it myself and just cut you out of the picture. It's really important to talk with your child, not talk at your child, talk with them to come to that mutual agreement about a solution. What can we do in this situation? Who can we talk to? And then again, respect that student, that child's wishes in relation to incidents. You know, again, if a student feels like an adult is not going to listen to them or is not going to be receptive, then they're going to just stop saying things. They're going to stop talking. And that's the opposite of what we want. Another thing to do is listen to your teenagers' like complaints about various things, especially vague general physical pains. If they complain about stomach aches a bunch of times, headaches, tiredness, all of that is, you know, a direct sign that they're going through difficulties at school. If they're increasingly sad or angry or silent, you know, things like that as well. Like, those can be signs that this student is more on edge than they would normally be. If they stop enjoying activities, if they come home and just go to their room, they don't talk, something's wrong. And, you know, trying to figure it out and talking with them to figure it out is really important. You know, some things are normal, like a teenager, they're going to be sad, they're going to be angry, they might be more emotional than they would normally be. But, you know, if it's out of the ordinary, you know your child. If they're doing something that's out of the ordinary, then working with them to figure it out is really important. The next thing, and this is after you talk with your child, is to approach the school, again, if your child's okay with it. And this is because you are your child's best advocate. So you as a parent, you know, teachers, educators, administrators, they value you as a parent, they value your opinion. So, you know, if something's happening in your class, in your child's class, then talking to the teacher of that class, making them aware. If the teacher's not doing anything, then going to the next person, going to their boss, essentially. So go to their superintendent and go to the principal. If the principal doesn't do anything, go to the superintendent. If the superintendent doesn't do anything, go to the State Department of Education. Just keep going up. You know, contact a local Muslim organization in your area that can also advocate for you on your behalf. Like, all of this stuff is going to increase pressure on administrators. You know, honestly, taking things to social media is also a good plan. That dramatically increases pressure of people, administrators, those empowered to do something. They are mandated by law to do something, and so holding them accountable to their job is really important. You can also request to meet with the parents of the bully and the teacher if you feel that's a good idea. And then also, as I mentioned with students, getting appropriate psychological support for your child. So if you feel like your child is depressed, offering for them to go to a mental health professional, go to the counselor, is really important. Again, like I said, just having that communication, getting their feedback, because oftentimes students, like teenagers, they're not asked for any of this information, and that's unfortunate. There's also really important efforts to get involved in your school. So why is this important? Again, as I mentioned, your child is there at the school all day, every day, 6 to 8 hours. And that's a lot of time away. And, you know, who knows what's going on there? So spending time in the classroom, you know, keeps you informed. What is my child learning? What is my child doing? And then also it, you know, makes you be able to observe your child in the school and also be more aware of the issues and the pressure that your child is dealing with. Another major thing that teenagers, you know, don't want to tell their adults is because they're not going to understand. But if you approach them and say, hey, I saw this incident happen, or I understand that it's really tough doing this or that, the student will feel heard. They'll feel good about talking to you about whatever it is that's the issue. It's also important to not really have like to integrate a student's world, both of their worlds, so their school world and their home world. Sometimes, like, you know, students have different identities. They are one way at school and they're one way at home. And if you're involved in both of those, then it's really easy. You're easily more able to be there in their life, set an example for them, and then also give them increased confidence. I remember those students whose parents were most involved in the school, they were often the most secure. They were the most confident. They had the highest self-worth. And again, if you're educating them or educating the teachers, the classroom, or something like that, then the students will feel proud of you as a parent. How can you do this? You know, it's important to really be visible. So that means attending back to school nights, going to open houses. Parent-teacher conferences are a must. You know, you have to go to those. But then other school functions as well. So if they have movie nights, science fairs, PTA meetings, just being there, raising your concerns if you have any, making comments, showing up, really important. When people, they'll ask you to get involved in planning of events and things like that. When these relationships start to develop, when you have relationships with other parents and with educators, administrators, then if something does happen, they're going to be much more likely to listen to you because this isn't the first time you're interacting with them. So again, relationships are really important for people, and visibility as well. If you want to take it a step further, then actually go for volunteer and head committees and projects. So helping with tutoring and grading, helping with projects, just being in the classroom for various things. Planning an Eid party for the students. I mean, it's a great way. Bringing in food. People love that. Heading committees, special events, serving on the PTA, all sorts of things like that. Like increasing your visibility in the community is really going to increase your child's confidence, but also help to increase your rapport with people. You can also look into the ING Youth Program. This is the program that I run. We work with Muslim students to address their school environments. We train and certify young Muslims as speakers to counter misconceptions about Islam in formal and informal settings. So that means using the resources I mentioned earlier to, you know, casually respond to people's questions, but also to give presentations in their classrooms. We have workshops where we talk about experiences. These are opportunities where students can actually talk about their own experiences, look at real life scenarios, and actually think about how they're going to respond to those scenarios. So it's not me telling them you need to do this or that. It's more them collaboratively thinking through things, proactively addressing scenarios that they might focus in the future to determine how they're going to respond if that scenario arises. Again, being proactive, learning about these things beforehand are really important. Another thing to do is And additionally, these scenarios are not just focused on Muslims, they're focused on other religions as well, because we really need to instill in people that this, we need to look out for one another. All students really need to look out for one another, and it's not just about Muslims or about Hindus or about Sikhs, it's about all of them coming together to create that environment for one another. We also have speaker trainings. This is when students get prepared to be able to use those resources to start to give presentations in their classrooms. And for the purposes of time, I'm going to move forward to advice to educators and schools. So anti-bullying programs are really important, but they need to be done right. So first of all, they need to be consistent year-round programming. Having one assembly in October is not going to do much for the rest of the year. Having monthly check-ins in your homeroom or advisory periods, having week-long things, like in general, having repeated things where you're drilling into these students that they need to care for one another, that is what's going to actually help. Moving beyond the standard assembly. So, going from just telling students to not bully to having them actually learn how to identify bullying, learn about its consequences, and also look at, again, real life scenarios. This will help students concretely understand whether they experience, witness, or even contribute to the problem. You can realize, I'm doing that. I should stop, and so on. Peer-to-peer education and intervention, also really important. The fact of the matter is that there are some students who will never trust an adult. They just won't. And having them be able to talk to other students who are trained mentors and know how to deal with certain situations, those types of programs are really effective and important. And then lastly, as I mentioned, school pledges and commitments. So having these students be aware, take an active pledge, active role in creating a good school environment. This isn't going to happen with passive comments or with a bullying incident that we then need to fix. It's only going to happen if we all go from right now and work towards that. Additionally, it's important to create inclusive classrooms. So just on a day-to-day basis, accommodating students' professions of faith. So, if they have to excuse themselves for prayer, if they have to take off for holidays, if they need to wear certain religious clothing, making sure that they're able to express their First Amendment rights. Teaching religion objectively and neutrally. So as I pointed out examples earlier where it was not taught in that way. And so, teaching according to the First Amendment, addressing different angles and diverse angles to a story. So not just presenting one singular viewpoint, but showing how this story or this lesson might be interpreted from different people. And then finally, facilitate productive discussions. It's easy to just shy away from discussing religion or discussing any sort of sensitive topic for not wanting to, mess it up. But if you learn how to do it, then having those discussions are really important for developing the mental complexity of these students to be able to grow up and actually be able to, think critically about situations that they're dealing with and how they should address them. So in general, being an honest facilitator about these things is important. We have other resources for teachers. We had a back-to-school campaign for our Know Your Neighbor program, and we have a ton of resources on curriculum for educators, video content for your classrooms, video content for educator training that are all located on here, ing.org/KYN content. Among some of these are ING's online curriculum. So if you want to learn how to better supplement your education about Islam and Muslims, viewing our lesson plans, which are highly comprehensive and they apply to California's standards of education standards. Viewing these, they're free for all teachers online. Just go to the website, ing.org/7-12. We also have frequently asked questions. So this is, 100 to 200 questions about various things for Muslims. Again, ways that you can learn about for yourself, but also teach and help with teaching for your students. ing.org/all-FAQs. There are questions about Muslims and Islam. There's questions about ISIS, Sharia, Islamophobia, all of those things, which are, again, really important for people to know. And then we also have cultural competency trainings. So again, as I mentioned, developing cultural competency skills is really important. Being aware of your students' needs, of the resources available to you. We have these trainings in person if you're in the Bay Area, but we also have these trainings available via webinar. I'll tell you how to get to them in a second. We have an Islamic Speakers Bureau, which may be in your area. This is a way to bring in a Muslim speaker to supplement that education about Islam in social studies classes. They can speak on a wide variety of topics. We have an Interfaith Speakers Bureau. So this is bringing different people of different world traditions to actually have and model honest dialogues about their faiths and traditions and their faith perspectives on various things. So they could have all of their faith perspectives on extremism or on women or pluralism and so on. To request any of these, you can contact the scheduler at ing.org, you can call our office, or and visit some of these links or our website. So with that, I'm going to stop here. My contact information is displayed here. Again, my name is Ishaq Pathan. You can feel free to call me if you have any concerns or questions at 408-296-7312, extension 130, or you can send me an email at ishaq@ing.org. So with that, I'm going to end this presentation, and we will move on. I'm gonna do this. There you go.
Thank you so much, Ishaq. That was a lot of good information. We did go a little over time. I didn't stop you because you were doing a great job. So I wanted to just continue.
Thank you.
But just quick pointers that I caught during your presentation, which I think are important to re-emphasize for those who may have joined us late. Number one, it is very important to change the environment of the school. It should become uncool and unacceptable to all students. In the whole atmosphere of the school should change. And that's how you can effectively, one of the ways you can effectively bring change and end or reduce bullying to a low extent, because as long as the culture remains that this type of behavior is acceptable, it's never going to change. So you have to change, students themselves have to change their attitude, they have to change their atmosphere. Having said that, studies have shown that when students themselves take lead to countering bullying in their school, it has a much more powerful and more effective way of dealing with bullying. So when students themselves engage in some sort of an anti-bullying campaign in their school, and they tell their schools and their environment and their teachers and their staff and their fellow students that we will not have this type of behavior tolerated in our school, it's going to be far more effective. Another thing which Ishaq mentioned as well, and I think is important to re-emphasize, is that a lot of parents don't know what to do if their kid is bullied and they report it and nothing happens. And as Ishaq pointed out, you can always keep going up the chain. If you can go to your teacher, if they don't do anything, go to the principal. If they don't do anything, go to the superintendent. If the superintendent doesn't do anything, then go to the board, the school board. The school board has regular meetings, I think on a monthly basis. Just go, and they're free. You can just go and sign up and join the meeting and say, hey, my child is being bullied in their school. I've reported it to the teacher, the principal, the superintendent, and none of them have done anything. So you can bring it to the board's attention. Now, even if the board doesn't do anything, you can threaten to go to the media and you can bring out your story. And as Ishaq pointed out, you can even go to social media and point out, hey, I went through the whole chain and nothing was done for me, for my child, to stop the bullying, and it is still continuing. Another point which I think needs to be mentioned in this issue is that a lot of kids have this understanding that if I tell someone that I'll somehow be tattling, or being a tattletale. But I read a piece online, which I think is very important to share here, is that tattling, there's a difference between tattling and also telling. Tattling means reporting something to get someone in trouble, while telling means letting adults know when someone is in danger. So you need to understand that difference. You need to understand that just because you're trying to protect yourself or looking out for your safety, you're not tattling, you're telling, you're trying to create a safe environment for yourself, and you have every right to do that. So don't get caught up in those linguistics that sometimes even bullies use, that if you tell someone, you're just going to be a tattletale. This is not tattling in this situation. This is protecting yourself, and you're just telling an adult to save and preserve yourself.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, in general about snitching, tattling, and all of that, there's a lot to look into that. But if it's a question, don't do it for yourself, do it for other students. Because as I mentioned, like, there are always going to be other students that come along that have to deal with that bully's behavior. And so if you're okay with it yourself, that student might not be okay with it. So having an adult be able to actually address what is going on is really important. In addition, there's this thing where if I tell people it's just going to get worse, but like it's not getting better. If it's bullying, you're dealing with it today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So if you want it to get better, something needs to happen. And most often that something involves bringing other people into the picture. And that should be, again, an adult who's going to listen to you. So you can choose, like, you can kind of weigh your chances. Like, you can either tell no one and it's just going to continue, or you can tell someone and there's a good chance it's going to stop. So, it's really weighing the options.
That's a good point as well. Now there's so I do have a few questions for you, which I came across over the week. So one of the things that very, very common is that a lot of parents tell their kids to ignore the bullying, and I think you mentioned it. You did discuss it briefly, but I wanted you to be more explicit about it. So a lot of parents have this general advice, especially in our Muslim community, where they tell the child, just ignore the bullying and they'll leave you alone. Just ignore it, ignore it. So my question is there ever a situation where you just ignore the bullying?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, like ignoring bullying isn't being patient, or it's not exemplifying patience. Like addressing it in a positive, thoughtful, and educational way is patience. So I'd always recommend going that route. A bully is someone who is trying to agitate you or trying to make you feel weird. And if you're able to show in one way or another that you don't feel weird about whatever it is they're doing, then they're going to be thrown off. And so I think in a lot of ways, I don't think ignoring it's going to help, because it often escalates. People, they might make a comment to you one day and then you ignore it, and then the next day they might take your lunch money, and then the next day they might like hurt you in the at recess, or if you have recess. So things like this don't often stop, and I don't think that ignoring it is really gonna do much to help a situation. Something should be done in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. Second question is, so I've done a few, I've had a few conversations with a few high school students on the topic of bullying. And so whenever I ask them, would they ever tell someone if they were bullied, a lot of them say no. And I ask why wouldn't you say something? And almost all of them have the same response. They always say, because I don't want to be a snitch. So what's the response to that? That this idea that if I tell someone I'm snitching or I'm somehow weak or I'll lose my self-confidence, how do you explain to them that basically how would you respond to this, to a child like that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, like think of it more as like you're doing an act of good for your classmates. It doesn't have to be for you, it's like, there's this idea, I can handle it. I don't want to snitch because like, I'm just going to be that snitch. But like, if you snitch, or if I'm not going to use the word, if you tell someone, and you make a situation better, for everyone in the school, then people aren't going to get mad at you. If someone's bullying you, they're most often bullying other people too. And so if you're the one who does a heroic act of addressing it in some way, whether that's by yourself or by telling an adult, by a trusted adult, then you're not a snitch, you're a hero. And I think that's, again, like that's really that's an important thing to keep in mind. Like, view it as an act of self-righteousness rather than as an act of everyone's going to make fun of me. If you think everyone's going to make fun of you, then people will make fun of you. But if you're confident and you're strong and you're unfazed by what people are throwing at you left and right, then it's people will respect you in the end.
Okay. So I mean, I had 3 other questions, but I think you've already covered those very explicitly and thoroughly in the presentation. So I'm not going to ask those. But did you get any questions? I know you sent out your email. Did you get any questions?
I did not. So no questions on my end.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess then that's the end of the webinar. So as I said in the beginning, that we will be having this. This is recorded, so it will be available on YouTube. It'll be available on our website at ICNACSJ.org. And please do share it with your family and your friends. This is all very important information. And we thank Ishaq for coming on board from ING and giving us this very beautiful and thorough presentation. And a lot of great points were made. And Ishaq, if you can send us the PowerPoint, we can put it on the website as well. And so people can access it. Some people, they like to go through the slides themselves for more information and more thorough. Maybe some people want to take more notes for themselves. So if that's possible, that would be good. Is that possible?
I have to check on that, but at the very least, I can put together a resource sheet of all of the kind of main resources that were in the PowerPoint.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. So we'll have that on our website as well. Again, thank you for Ishaq for coming. Jazakallah khair for this beautiful presentation, and everyone who joined us, thank you so much. We hope to see you in our next webinar next month. So please join our mailing list and just keep an update. And as I said in the beginning, we will be doing a webinar every month on some issue related to bullying, and we hope to do that until June or July. Inshallah. So please do join us in the next webinar as well. Thank you for coming. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.